Matt Nisanoff. Thank you for joining us for PolitiPod Live. Welcome to our first episode as we discuss politics and current events. Matt, would you like to start us off with the first topic?
Let's kick off. And yes, welcome everyone. Welcome to our first show. We're very glad that you decided to give it a chance. We are starting off tonight with Charlie Kirk and his shooting and the aftermath of that, which is what we are looking at now. The memorial service, which took place, had a lot of things I haven't seen at funerals before. I've not gone to a funeral and had multimedia presentations and pyrotechnics as people come out to talk. And then it kind of was, for lack of better terms, unseemly, I thought, with the fireworks and everything going off. I think it detracted from having a memorial, from memorializing a person that it was meant for. What do you think, Tom?
Absolutely. I have to agree with you there. It was not the most reverent ceremony. I mean, it was had the air of a WWE undercard. You know, I feel bad for Charlie Kirk's wife. She just lost her husband out of the blue, victim of violence. It's terrible. There was some reverence there. There was humanity there to be mined and explored, and instead you had just the opposite. From the fireworks when she took the stage. I mean, okay, and then she had this sort of I didn't catch all of her speech, but she had a message in there that anybody could agree with. Love, not hate. You can't beat hate with hate. And then, of course, they had to bring on your headliner. You know him, you love him. He had to step on her glory as a sympathetic figure. He had to go on after her. He had to follow her in a showbiz sense, which is really crass. And on top of that, he stepped on her message. Her message of love. And he's like, nope, I hate him. I hate him. I hope they fall down and hit their heads on something sharp. Sorry. He said sorry from the stage. Anyway, it's hugely disrespectful to the woman herself. I don't know. That's the first thing off the top of my head. And yeah, just like the fireworks, I was thinking to myself, what, no T-shirt cannon? I mean, they had merch, for Pete's sake. It's just, anyway, that was my thought.
That was, yeah, and that was maybe over the. I think there's a good case to say that's a little over the top. And although in her message she has said that she forgave the person who did the shooting, which I think is actually she's following through on what she said her principles are. That she has a
Refreshingly.
very strong faith, and forgiveness is part of that, and she was forgiving him. So that's actually kind of hopeful. I think if she's going to stick to that as the new leader of the media empire, there, I think if she pursues that honestly, then that could be a big step. But as you say, the issue is there's that other foot that's dragging behind, and that's Donald Trump, who really needs there to be hate. So he is going to pursue hate because he needs it, or at least he feels he needs it. And he does pursue it very vigorously. So we'll see, just like all of the leftists are doing this and the leftists are doing that. Usually when he complains about somebody doing something that's not himself, it's a tell. He's telling you the things he does and the way he acts and the way his followers are. He's messaging them to act in the same way. So we'll see how that plays out, and we'll see if that doesn't obliterate her message and kind of outweigh her actions. I don't know. We'll certainly see.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's to be seen. I It just seems like a fundraising opportunity that people don't want to miss, and it has the dual benefit of also taking this false narrative to its fullest extent. These people have to pay, and it's not even the people. If you have to assign people to one person who goes crazy with a gun, uh, you have to and they're choosing to beat people over the head who don't deserve it. There were no trans people involved. There were no left leaners involved, to the best of our knowledge. And unfortunately, knowledge is suspect because Kash Patel is in charge of the FBI, and I don't think he's either intelligent or has integrity, integrous. I don't trust his integrity or his intelligence, and you can't trust anything they've said. They've jumped wrong every time. They help perpetuate this, which is just other dark side of the moon wrong for law enforcement agency. They at least pay lip service to it. I'm not saying they're always scrupulous, FBI, but they always seem to be trying, and they at least in lip service adhere to these principles. And I have no doubt that not all the time, but most of the time, they probably live up to it. Anyway, and then for them to just about face and before there is a suspect, before there is real evidence, and then when the evidence, before they do that, before there is any reason to know anything, they blame a group, and then when the evidence does come in, it gets contorted to still blame that group, even through ignorance. I mean, the markings on the bullet casings, that is rookie 101 stuff. I would know better than to do that. Anyway,
that's all propaganda. Yeah, that's all part of the propaganda thing. At first, they said the shooter was obviously trans. Then it became, well, he wrote things on the bullet shells, and then that came to, actually, he had a roommate who was trans. So obviously, the trans, and every step is always somehow related, but not actually the truth, which is what really suffers in these things. And you're right. It's not going to change anytime soon. Maybe it will change in a couple of years, but we don't see that changing while this group of folks are there. And if I may,
please.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to make note of how nefarious it is in the aftermath of something like that. We just don't know what the truth is, and the human mind is just hungry for information. We're looking for someone to tell us assign meaning to this, and then it's just makes it. People have such a propensity to believe the first thing they hear, and then a lot of people shut off. I think they don't read the papers anymore. They just pass socially. They natter to each other. We all discuss the news, and then it gets into a bubble. And then when the real news does come out, a lot of people stay misinformed anyway. It's pernicious because people are so vulnerable to it.
Yeah, excellent point. Yeah, I agree. And also, it brings up that whole issue of the Trump folks and who are his followers and the people he's put in positions of power. There's the whole thing with this Mr. Homan. You got anything to say about that guy?
That guy, Mr. Homan, I've seen this human thumb talking on the Sunday shows any number of times, and he's always supercilious. He always talks down to anyone and everyone in front of him, and he has this false confidence of ignorance. I don't think he knows what he doesn't know. Anyway, just so super sweet guy, personality-wise, very charming. And he's in charge. He's the border czar. He's in charge of, the agencies that are at the vanguard of harm in this country. Anyway, and so he's a terrible person in my estimation. I haven't enjoyed him. And then to hear that he took a literal bag of cash. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. Why innovate when you're doing fraud? He's probably, I'm sure it wasn't his first bag of loot. And so, yeah, he probably had, you gotta work volume, I guess, get him in, get him out. But for him to have taken this money and then for it to be covered up anyway, it's a trifold sandwich of fraud and corruption. That's what I think. How's it strike you?
It seemed, yeah, exactly, and the amount isn't even what's important. It's the fact that he's taking bribes. Now it happened to be what, $50,000, something like that,
Yeah,
and that's
50K.
yeah, that's more than enough.
That'll
That's
do it.
pretty damn good. Um, Here in New York, we had a case where someone had from the Adams, uh, a volunteer to
Eric
the
Adams,
Adams
current mayor.
campaign of Eric Adams, current mayor and not future mayor, was saying that after an event that she had gone up to a reporter who she had been talking with and had some professional relationship with, and offered her potato chips. And when the reporter said, "I'm not really hungry," she said, "Here, take the potato chips." And later, the reporter looked inside the bag and found a envelope full of cash. It was actually only 300. So I don't
Yeah,
know. Maybe the amount has some sort of something to say about that. But it was $300 and in 100s and 20s, and um, she, the reporter, to her credit, did try to return it. She immediately said, "This is not something I can take, and you have to take it back." And she wouldn't. You have to have it. We're friends, or something along those lines. But there is that sort of corruption where just the idea of, oh, here's a big pile of money, I should take it. And it's really disheartening to think that that's so prevalent at this time.
yeah. I read about that story. Hugely this one of the reasons I have started reading the news is because about 1 in 10 stories is absolutely hilarious or mind boggling, and this is one of those. You rarely get to see the bribe. You know what I mean? And to see one go off or be documented by a journalist, it's just fascinating. Uh, but I have to wonder what went wrong here. Did she simply think it was like this reporter is not going to sell her principles for the first time for what would you say 300 clams, a day and a half salary or something for some reporter probably. uh Now if it was the fifth time she'd been bribed and it's just something that is keeping going, I could see that, like a payment plan. I could see that if it was someone. But so I have to wonder if this lady picked out the wrong reporter. Maybe all the white reporters. Uh, anyway, never mind. That was a stupid thought. I'm gonna strangle it before it draws a breath. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
she was a white reporter,
Well, I
a
was
white
gonna say,
female reporter,
and
and
let me
she turned it back.
before that gets any farther. What I was gonna say is, I understand that the lady carrying the chip bag full of money was Asian. I was gonna make a white people look all alike to a different race. That's as terrible, but not that anyway.
I think the
So
home and bribery was all white people, if that makes it
right, exactly,
makes it
yeah,
better.
exactly. I'm willing to own up to that. Anyway, so
So speaking
anyway, I
about
just wonder if she was going to the wrong reporter. Maybe she uh, I don't know, didn't get all the sleep she needed that day, or what went wrong there. I don't get it.
Too true, but to the reporter's credit, she immediately said, "This is not okay," and you don't get that out of Homan or any of the people on the current administration. They just accept it. Okay, great. I'm going to take it. I'm going to take the cash and run. And that's because that snake starts from the head, and that rot goes down. So to who's there? So what is that? So the other issue with Trump was the UN speech that he gave and how that went. There was a big deal about how the escalator didn't work when he and Melania got on it to go up to the chambers, and some guy from Fox said that that the U.S. should bomb the UN headquarters in response, which
Yeah, that was
is,
Jesse Waters.
yeah, whoever, yeah, whichever one. I mean, they're interchangeable in my mind. I don't watch that show or I don't watch that network, so I don't know. But he did say it, and here we're talking. for all the flowery talk about how we need to not have political violence, you've got a guy on Fox one day who talks about lethal injections for the homeless, and we should just kill them.
Involuntary.
Yeah, right, right. That we should just kill them, and then the next day is this guy talking about bombing the UN because an escalator didn't work. So where is that stuff coming from? I mean, I don't think people who work for Fox are Antifa. I don't think there's any evidence for that. I don't think that there's any possibility of that being the case. So where's the political violence coming from? But that does bring us, I think, to Trump's war on America. I think that it's continuing. He's already brought military troops into Los Angeles, into it was down, I think, in Baltimore, and then now he's talking about Chicago, and Memphis. So another place that you may not have thought of because it's a red state, but I believe Memphis is perhaps a little bit more blue as far as the county goes. And so here we go again. It's going to be Memphis, then Chicago, then folks in New York are expecting the National Guard any week now, and it's going to there's no sign that Trump's going to come to his senses and start following the rule of law and not bringing U.S. military forces into American cities. So I'm afraid that is going to continue, and we're not going to see it. Probably we're not going to see that change till he leaves. I think once he's gone, maybe there'll be some semblance of trying to repair what has been done, or at the very least, not continuing it. I don't know who the Republican nominee will be, so I can't say that with 100% certainty right now. But I think we will see a sort of ratcheting down of the political violence that's coming from the right and alt-right, and maybe we can repair the damage that's been done. I would hope.
Man, that is a hopeful note. But then again, I mean, we're talking medium term here. Well, yeah, it's
Yeah, I apologize.
no worries.
I'm live from New York, so sometimes you'll hear that was a fire truck going by,
These things
not the
happen.
police. So
I was gonna ignore it and then let people wonder which of us it was coming from. But you started out by talking about the National Guard being deployed to peaceful cities. I mean, that alone is borderline dystopian nightmare. You know what I mean? If that's not a dystopian movie, it's at least a miniseries. And anyway, and
if there's anybody left to be able to put together television shows.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say anything, right? But it's hard for me to generate anything beyond that. I mean, I feel like it's self-explanatory. How bad is it? Well, the National Guard, and then that's before you even get to ICE. At least the National Guard has some level of professionalism and training. ICE is just, I think it's just a bunch of moonlighting prison guards, and who knows? You can't see their faces. That's part of the problem. So basically you've got goon squads in Walmart khakis. They're not well trained. These people are likely to do something stupid at their earliest ability. I haven't had a chance to research it yet. I saw on my phone a story recently where they shot up some car and said the guy was driving at us, and then video came out a day later that I haven't seen the video, but the story that accompanied it stated that it contradicted what the original story was from the agents on the scene, and they can't ask the guy that allegedly drove at him because he's shot full of holes and dead. And so you have these. It's only going to happen more. Why would they stop? They've got a huge budget. They got a budget the size of Texas. they can afford badges. They won't have them, but they can afford them now. They're only going to be better funded. They're going to have bigger toys. Excuse me, bigger toys. Anyway, so I despair for it,
Well,
for this country, and Congress doesn't seem to know what to do about it. Whoever is supposed to check this stuff and save us is not doing the job. Anyway,
well, yeah, and that's and part of it is these are not guys who are trained. They're given some training when they sign up, but it's everybody. It's open to Dean Kane. It's open to anyone who walks off the street who needs a
right.
couple of bucks.
Somebody
And
with
it's
those
not
credentials. Woo.
right. It's not somebody who's law enforcement. And yet they're able to do what they do because local law enforcement is not exactly going to chase them down. I've heard of a handful of cases where tow truck drivers will, if they can find them, the tow truck drivers will go up and grab the cars if they're blocking the street and they tow away their cars, which is interesting, probably the first sign of some sort of resistance. But not the correct thing, which is for the police to arrest these guys for pretending to be law enforcement. There is maybe another sign of resistance is what's happening out in California, which is they are or just are about to pass something for getting ICE people to have to show their face. They won't be able to wear masks, and that's I think that's an excellent start. It's not going to solve the problem, but it certainly is one of the starting things that's achievable and can make a difference. Because if these guys are not going to be able to pretend to be ISIS with their faces covered, then maybe they're going to be a little bit more open to accepting responsibility, or at least being held responsible for their actions when they take another kid with cancer and take them off to a holding cell, or if they take somebody who's been a citizen for years and right. have no actionable information, but go through with what they're told to do because they're trying to throw some scare into someone.
Well, they're throwing a scare into people. They're also trying to fill quotas. There's an impossible to meet quota on these folks every day, and they're just grabbing whoever. Bodies. People think they'll just take you in and they release you if you pass. No, these people are getting they're getting the shit beat out of them. They're getting pounded into the street. They're getting joints wrenched. They're not going to walk the same ever again. These are some old guy, like 80 years old, at a car wash. They threw him to the ground like a sack of potatoes, busted him all up, bruised, swelling, terrible looking injuries. He's pushing 80, whatever he was. So it's not no harm, no foul. It's not okay to be grabbed off the bloody street not by cops, even just by some schmuck in a mask and a hat, a Proud Boy from your local Proud Boy association. Here's the thing that bothers me. Not only are citizens getting roughed up, this is why you don't become a vigilante. And these are barely cops in any sense, to my way of thinking, because no badge, no number. That's just some dude to me. I can write police on my shirt. It doesn't make me the police. And people have been victimized by fake officers. I don't know how much, probably as much as there are,
once is too many. One
voter.
Time is too many.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm worried about the day when people just start shooting at these ICE officers, because it's going to be on. And then the government's going to drop the hammer because they're waiting to. So it's just a powder keg, and I'm amazed it hasn't gone any worse than it is.
Well, they've already done that. The government has already tried to use that excuse. There's this issue down in Dallas where there was somebody apparently with a gun on top of an ICE facility, and the administration went straight to Fox to decry the horrors of the ICE personnel being targeted, when actually the only people shot in that incident were people who were detainees. 2 detainees were killed and some others wounded, a third person wounded, and none of them ICE personnel.
I want to say I read a report or a headline at least about an hour ago that's they walked that back and said only one person had been killed. So I'm not sure. It's just something I read.
Oh, gotcha. Well, I sure hope it's right. We over the next coming days, we'll find out what actually happened.
Yeah, well,
And I
and
certainly hope that your report was right and that it was only one person. But once again, isn't one too many?
absolutely,
Um,
one's too many. But I'd like to take the opportunity to briefly point out again that in the aftermath of things, especially shootings, the reporting from law enforcement and journalists often wrong. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sure these people are doing their best. It's just a fact of the way these things happen. This is a terrible way. I'm not exactly nailing the phrasing here, but it's
well,
just of a piece. It always happens that way, and you have to wait for the revised story before you can base your thinking. And you have to give it 12 hours or 24 or 36, and with a cool head and a competent, hand at the till, not what we've got going on now.
yeah, it takes time to get the facts straight because you have to sort through what is rumor, what is true, and you can't do that instantaneously. And that's, as you point out, a legitimate problem. Certainly, with needing things to say for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's what happens. Honestly, I don't think that I don't think it's disinformation. I think it's just trying to rush to give something, and that's its own problem. But I don't think I don't think that the initial reports are necessarily trying to spin things one way or another. It's just they got something and they want to make certain that they're first to report it, and so that's a different issue. That's a different problem, but it's a different thing than what's coming from the administration. The other issue there is, and we touched on it very briefly on one or two examples of what is the resistance, what is it that can be done in response to the situation we're in. And so there are some good moves by the states. There's the example of California and requiring masks are not that requiring that masks not be worn by ICE agents. And what else can be done? Now, let me give you a timeline that I see, or at least I imagine to be the case, and then please tell me what you think. Um, but I think that there is a place for the 2026 election and the 2028 election. I do think that an idea that you have mentioned before, which is a general strike, is something that uh, would be influential. I think that economics is very much a lever of how things are taken care of here.
Jimmy Kimmel
And
says hi.
exactly, exactly. And so if we can put together these marches, which we've seen in even not only just the big places, but even the small towns where they're getting dozens and scores of people to show up, it says something. It says that this is really the concerns that these things are bringing up are genuine. They're going so far down that they are getting into the towns and the villages, and people are responding to it. And that says that a collective action like a general strike, I think, would very clearly affect the economic system, and that would in turn get a lot of people's attention and get a lot of people worried. And instead of people staying home to collect labubus, people getting into the streets and acting is the next step in what would be a resistance. And does it go on to something else from there? That will have to be seen in how the reaction to these steps take place.
Absolutely. Um, you covered a lot of territory there. Gavin Newsom is not a perfect person, not a perfect politician, although he may be the perfect politician with the teeth and the hair. But he's not my ideal. But he has been doing just the Lord's work, if this atheist may say, in refuting and rebuking the Trump administration on a wavelength with the tone that they use, and it's a code that too few have cracked yet. Too few have cracked this code in how to respond effectively to one Donald John Trump, and he's doing that right. We've needed someone to talk a little shit to this guy. You know what I mean? A little bit. And this knock-kneed, pencil-neck, Poindexter attitude that most of these starched-up politicians have both Republican and Democrat. Nobody had this guy's number. Finally, Gavin Newsom is. We should have been doing this 2 weeks into his bit in 2015. That we should have. That's how slow we are, and look where it's brought us. Anyway, so I applaud Gavin Newsom for getting that right. He's been wrong on a lot of other things, so I'm not.
Well,
fan
let me disagree with you slightly on that.
Okay, please. I live to be corrected.
Okay, no problem. I think I will agree with you that Newsom is doing a positive thing by responding in the way that he is. He's mocking him. Newsom is mocking Trump, and
on his own terms.
That's exactly, and that is something that I think people want to not only want to see, but also kind of makes it clear to both sides. All of a sudden, what Newsom does, all of a sudden the conservatives are besides themselves and don't understand how he could do that. And what about decorum? And what about all these things? And they're seeing what we've been seeing for the last, 10 years.
Yeah.
But I will say this. I mean, the initial counter in his own manner was done in Trump's own manner was done by Rubio. Remember Mark Rubio back in the 16 election?
Sure.
Came out for like 3 weeks and tried to do his
swinging, right?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody, he's always been that polished sort of trying to pass as the statesman. But then he took like this 3-week detour where he tried to be the mean and nasty guy and tried to say things, tried to talk crap about Trump. And he even kind of got loose and kind of got into it.
Isn't that where Little Hands came from?
Yeah. Well, I think that was after, and it was in response. But what it also did was flopped. It just, nobody accepted it from him. Nobody thought that it was, they saw that it was just a silly pretense.
Right.
And it was a belly flop for Rubio. Another one, but
yeah, they just they can't crack the code. They're not built for it. None of these guys are tough guys. None of them are fighters. They're used to groveling, I guess. I mean, I just say this from appearances. They seem like they're used to groveling to, I don't know, rich people, or at least, I don't know. But being tough, rarely do they seem to be good at it. And to do it charismatically, politically, I feel like Chris Christie took a swing. I feel like a lot of people took him on, but most of them, I mean, you're right. Marco Rubio was notable in his effort, but several tried and they just couldn't do it. Plus, Trump has a mastery of the media that they also. Every time I remember, Chris Christie had an announcement to make, some big announcement. He was going to own the news day, and Trump came out like half an hour the night before or something like that, and totally swamped him. And he just did that to everybody. He was too good on too many levels, and they were too inept.
Well, I would never say that Trump was a master of anything, and that includes golf, but it also extends into political wisdom. I don't think he's a master of it. I think that he might be.
I mean, what I mean to say is there's a tactic that they use that works that everyone else has comparatively been too slow to catch up to. I don't mean to throw any adoration or praise on the guy, believe me.
But that's the thing. So what I would say is, look at Gingrich when he came in on taking over Congress from the Democrats when he ran. Part of his tactics were to undermine the opponent. So in other words, Gingrich sent out, you may know this, may not, that in that election for Congress, Gingrich sent out tapes cassette tapes, if you remember cassette tapes. He sent out cassette tapes to everybody running as a Republican, and they had instructions on them on how to campaign, what to say, what tact to take in when you were running against a Democrat, that kind of thing. And part of it was always attack their strength, because people don't expect that. And of course, in some cases, they won't even respond because they'll think, oh, well, they're talking about the thing I'm strongest on. I don't need to respond. At the time, they thought that.
Yeah.
I think maybe they've learned their lesson since then, because it was effective, because people took that message. And as you said, people don't always look into the details and go into digging into what the, what things are beyond sort of that initial reaction. And people took that and said, oh, well, then the other candidate must not have anything to offer or isn't really good on that issue, even though it's their best issue, that kind of thing. So that idea of undermining has been around. And I think that there were people who, like Roger Stone and the Nixon guy, who
Roy
helped
Cohn?
Roger Stone. Roy Cohn, yeah, thank you. I keep forgetting that guy's name. Roy Cohn and Roger Stone, that they took the tactics of Nixon and gave them to Trump, and then just said, but remember not to back down. So it was more, Nixon at some point or another, when Baker went to him and said, you got to really, you got to resign. This is done. The Watergate thing, you can't, we're going to have to convict you. So quit. And that's what Nixon did. But now it's not that. Trump is always on the attack. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't doesn't back down, and that's seen as strength. And now the Republican establishment, what's left of it, kind of goes and falls in line behind him. So there's no Howard Baker to go to him and say, look, this is really, this is detrimental to the country. This is not acceptable. And nobody's going to say that to him, especially in this second term where he has mostly lackeys behind. In that first term, he did hire the establishment people. He did hire people who were, as a chief of staff of the White House, who had some standing in the establishment, that kind of thing. And he learned his lesson.
He really did. Learned it well, too. Now it's all lackeys.
Yeah, exactly. And it's lackeys. And that means it's going a place where we've not been before, or certainly haven't been any time in the past, in a very long time, if ever. So that's a problem. That's not going to be, it's not easy to just emulate it to defeat it. And the question is, what is there to defeat it? And I wish I had the answer to that. Yeah. But I certainly don't. I wish somebody had the answer to that, because as you pointed out, nobody seems to. I mean, you look at what's supposed to be the opposition. You look at Schumer, Chuck Schumer in the Senate, the minority leader, and who's when it came to the Trump first budget, there was talk about, well, how do you resist it? And Schumer was like, well, we're going to pass it, and then we're going to see what they do, and if people don't like it, then they can vote him out. So not that isn't the old way of doing things, and something that what used to be a way to counter the opposition was to let them do what they're going to do and then let the people decide. But as I said, it's not the 1950s anymore. It's not something that we can handle by just laying back and waiting. It's way too late already.
Yeah.
And the question is, as it gets worse, how much more do you have to do in order to counter where we are?
Well, that's, you bring it back full circle, and to something you mentioned before is a general strike. I got to tell you, I'm pretty enamored of the idea. I think it's a good idea. I think we need something big, something that involves like protests. But if all those people did something more innately and valuable, more productive, and I think walking off the job as a show of force, I think will go a long way. And it's nonviolent. I think we need to keep our eye on the ball as far as being nonviolent, but we can't. Protests alone won't do it. And on the other, anyway, so we haven't done enough yet, and I feel like that is a good first step. I think it's doable. I think it would. I mean, look at the success people have had with the backlash with Jimmy Kimmel and his show being taken off the air for almost a week. They came back around pretty quickly, and to punch a hole in an authoritarian's veneer like that is very powerful. And that's just a TV show. If people can't you can't get swaths of people not if you can't get them to show up for work, people are going to start making phone calls, and this is all well and good while they're fleecing the masses, but when the masses turn around, I think it'll be a different story. Anyway, what do you think? I don't hear anybody talking about this. It makes me feel like a crazy person. What do
Yeah,
you?
absolutely.
You're
Yeah.
a sane mind. Please enlighten me.
Well, actually, I have been thinking about it more, and I do think you have an excellent point. If there's something that's going to be a nonviolent response, but one that needs to be heavy enough to make a difference, and the way you can do that most, prominently is to go for economics. Go to what will cause someone who is based their life on being wealthy and say, well, okay, you're not going to get as much all of a sudden. What happens? And they get very involved on their end to see what you can do. So if there were, I don't know if anybody has called for a general strike. I think at one point there was a discussion, a particular day had been offered out or sent out by in at least in some political circles. There were talk about a particular day to do a general strike. I don't know if it ever got any support, or if it certainly didn't take place. So maybe there's some. So people have talked about it. It's something that can certainly be put forward and not be. Let me say that another way. There's a way it could be put forward with credibility.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So there's
please go
something to
ahead.
look at.
Yeah, and one thing that occurred to me while you're speaking is that I was taken back in time to the last time we had a show of some sort of force in this country, other than the protests recently that I've been very happy to see. But the George Floyd, when you finally get people into the streets and they still don't feel heard, they start rioting. And I feel like, and even even a finer thought on that, more anyway. You can't. There are people who are protesting who are being. You get heckled and sometimes attacked by counter protesters, but a lot of times people will protest in maybe a Portland, and the cops will shoot them with rubber bullets in the face. Journalists get shot in the face. Politicians get shot with these rubber bullets and injured. I've read somewhere that you're supposed to shoot rubber bullets at the asphalt, and then the ricochet shrapnel is supposed to hit people in the body and brush them back. You're not supposed to go full bore into the skull with it. Otherwise, it's not as non-lethal. I know, I haven't taken a college course on it, but it seemed pretty reasonable. Anyway, and so given the danger of protesting, I wouldn't send my dear saintly old grandma out to protest in any hotly contested, so far we've been lucky, but people get knocked down. I think we've all seen the video of a old guy, older gentleman, tall, slender. Cops gave him a shove, as they do, except this guy had little bird bones, and big lanky dude fell over backwards, cracked his noggin, and that's the last thing he ever did. All he was doing was hanging out, talking to these guys. Absolutely no threat. And so, given the vulnerability, the propensity for danger in even a simple protest, again, from counter protesters, goon squads, hello, they're not just gonna keep it to the current demographic they're bothering, they're definitely going to turn on you in other categories. But given the danger, the inherent potential for danger in protesting, a general strike, what are they going to do? You know, if you're not out there doing something, e.g., working, you're not going to be a victim of violence, vigilante violence, state violence. You're safe. Take a sick day. You know, do it once. You don't. It doesn't have to be a lifestyle, or maybe it could take a week or a month. Who knows? I don't know, and I know a lot of people can't afford that, but we have to do something. And anyway, so I just thought the sliver of danger that there is in even peaceful protesting makes this idea a little more attractive.
Absolutely. Fair point. We'll have to see what actually happens, and hopefully we'll, as you say, find a nonviolent way to get through. And these things with, people who seem fragile being the targets, because they're easier to target, because it's easier to push over a guy 80 years old than it is to do some other things. Or there's when it's people who are wandering around ready to react, then that's a different. All of a sudden, there's kind of, well, let's hold off on some things. So how people make their displeasure known, obviously, if it's done in numbers, if it's done with a large group, then that's going to be a different thing than if it's just a handful of people, folks like us, elderly people who are just standing on a corner.
Hey, wait just a damn minute. Matt, I see by the clock on the wall it's time for our next for our segment, Election Central. Would you like to take it away from there?
Absolutely. PolitiPod Live, in combination with Election Central, wants you to know about upcoming elections. We were talking earlier, I mentioned that 2026, 2028, I think are still important things that will happen, that are steps that are necessary to get through, to not be scared of. But a lot of folks don't know that there's elections that are happening every week in America. Somewhere there's an election going on, and
it never ends.
Yeah, there's local elections. Sure, you don't know about them maybe because there's the big federal presidential election every 4 years, and of course, because it's not a nationwide, everybody's talking about it. Every newspaper, every television station, every radio station, everybody wants to give their take and try to maybe bring it down to their community to report about it. But everybody's talking about it, so you cannot get away with not knowing about it. But there's local level of elections that happen, as I say, every week across the country. And so I like to try to get word out about the ones that are coming up, as opposed to just giving results. I give you a couple of results too, but try to get you to hear about it beforehand. And if you happen to know somebody in the area that's mentioned, strike up a conversation about it. Let them know that it is coming up. For instance, on September 28th, if you know someone from Puerto Rico, there's the Representative District 31, and they're having a special election. The seat holder had run for mayor of a particular town and won the election. So the seat as a representative is open. So they need to hold a special election to fill the seat. And so if you are on Puerto Rico and you're in the 31st district for representatives, the day to vote is September. The day for you to be heard is September 28th. That's another thing. That's why I mentioned the elections before, because this is actually how you hold people accountable when they're in political office. During the time they're there, it's good to tell them what you think, and it's good for them to hear. And there'll be some that will listen. There'll be some who won't, because the only actual accountability is at the ballot box. So you have to go and you have to vote, and voting every time is what sends the message of what you want. and organizing for it to get your friends to go and vote too is a good idea. That's the way you get the point across. There's a bunch of elections coming up down in the South on October 7th. Birmingham, Alabama has a general election. In North Carolina, they've got local elections all across the state that are happening. So if you know someone in North Carolina, talk to them about what's going on in their area. See if there's an election on October 7th. Encourage them to go out and vote. There's a special primary in Tennessee's 7th Congressional District. Republican Mark Green quit, and it's apparently for a position in the private sector. So that means the seat's available. So October 7th, go out and vote if you're in Tennessee's 7th Congressional District. Also on the 7th, Juneau, Alaska has its general municipal elections. So local elections, Assembly District 2 and the Board of Education are actually competitive. There's, I think, 4 seats on the ballot. 2 are uncontested. And the District 2 and Board of Elections are actually contested elections. So get out and vote. And then there's also some ballot propositions. They have a cap on taxes. It is Alaska. They have a cap on taxes on the ballot. The second is to reduce taxes on essential goods and utilities. And then the third one is to create a seasonal tax that is increased for 3 or 4 months out of the year and then reduced when they're not in their season. And that's to make up for the loss of tax revenue from Prop 2. So there's a lot going on up there. Make certain you get out to the polls if you're in Juneau and October 7th comes around. Should I go with a couple of more?
Absolutely.
I think you might have something for Grijalva's election in Arizona. That down in Arizona's 7th Congressional District, Raul Grijalva, the seated congressman, passed. He died while in office. And we certainly offer condolences to his family and friends and constituents. But there was an election to fill the seat, and the winner was a elected official and Representative Grijalva's daughter, Adlita Grijalva. And she won. Oh, yeah. No, I kid you not. She won actually very handily. She won 70% of the vote. The Republican had just under 30%. And there were there were 11 other candidates, 9 who are write-ins who didn't get a whole lot. And then there was a Green candidate and a fourth unlisted party candidate who the Green and the unlisted actually got tens of thousands of votes, but not enough to touch the 2 main candidates, the Republican and the Democrat. In Colorado City of Creed, there's actually a recall of the mayor and one of the trustees. And in a number of places, not everywhere, but in a number of places, there's the ability to recall elected officials. And you have to get a certain percentage of the voters from the previous election so you get 20% of the election, 20% of the people who voted in the previous election. If you get that number of signatures, then a recall can be held.
Gotcha.
I'm
not too sharp on the topic, but I did live through the Gray Davis years in California.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Conversant.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. In Colorado, in Creed, Colorado, they have that a similar system. It is a recall thing, and the person looking at the recall vote or the recall request said, they have enough valid signatures, so we got to go forward with this recall. They said, she also said the reasons that they're listing, I have no idea what's going on with that. That's nothing to do with me. I don't make my decision based on the what people allege, but they did get the valid signatures, so we're going to go ahead with the election. And there are only 1 person for each of the seats running if the recall passed. So the ballot's in half. You first vote on should there be a recall, and then you also vote on if the recall passes, do you want this candidate or that candidate? In this case, there were no contest. Neither of them were contested. So it was if you vote for the recall, then you put in this other person, yes or no. And both recalls passed heavy percentages voting to have the recall go through, and the uncontested candidates win. So they
Yeah.
have a new mayor and a new trustee, and that's Erica Roden is going to be mayor, and Tom Roden is going to be the trustee. That once again, got to go out and vote. Um, October 14th in
Well, you
DeForest,
still can.
Wisconsin. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, and that's what I think that not only these local elections going on around the country, but also, as I said earlier, in 26 and I believe in 28, it's going to actually matter. That's why they're so desperate to make it a scary thing. That's why they're so desperate to do congressional redistricting in the middle of a 10-year period,
Yeah.
because they're scared. They're scared of your voting, and they are going to do and say anything to try to scare you so that you don't. So that makes it even more important. That's the tell. You
Right.
know, their tell is
Sure.
that they're so scared they're trying to stop you from voting, and that's why it's even more important to get out and do it. I'll tell you what, I'll skip down to the last one just to mention that Iowa has to go to the polls for local elections across the state, and there's going to be some of them are doing it on October 28th, and others are doing it on October 7th. So check your local listings for the election in Iowa. If you are an Iowa citizen who is registered to vote. And that's your Election Central report from PolitiPod Live.
Great work, Matt. Thank you for that. Man, how about that Jimmy Kimmel, huh?
I bet you he votes.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
bet he does. Yeah, so, pour one out for old Jimmy. He made it back in less than a week. I mean, what started out as a pretty fearsome piece of overreach by the government, he's smelling like roses today. What's your take?
well, yeah, I think the reaction was what was really important in there. I think while we're speculating on the reason, and it was certainly a threat to the First Amendment, but I don't know what they actually talked about. I don't think we'll ever really know what the behind the scenes discussion was about. But I'm certainly glad that the First Amendment came out the winner, and that he was back on. I mean, he gave a very emotional. I watched the monologue. It wasn't. It certainly wasn't about humor. It was very heartfelt, and in fact, he even teared up a couple of times. I believe genuinely moved by the issues that he was talking about, First Amendment and other issues. So it's nice to see. It's nice to see one of the good guys win, and I think that's what that has. That's what we're seeing here, is that he got back on the air. There are still. He did mention there's about 20% of the stations that have not taken him back on yet. They are clearly, they're clearly saying things like, "Oh, he has to do this or he has to do that." So they're looking for concessions from him for certain things or to say certain things, and that is a shame. It's a shame that they have to go there when he clearly has made his apology, genuine, heartfelt apologies, uh, even for things that may have been perceived that he was saying and not actually said. But he even, he didn't address that. He just said, "Here, I really want to apologize," and he took it to some emotional places as well.
Yeah, uh, I want to say like an hour ago, I just happened to see that somebody had requested, like I want to say shareholders or somebody on that side of the fence for ABC had requested documents from those who made the decision to fire Jimmy Kimmel, they're questioning that the thought process there. And if documents get requested, if documents get provided, maybe we will find out just what the thought process was there. So you never know what's going to come
I
out.
I think that's more likely with government, where you have to keep records and you have to turn them over. You
Hmm.
know, even in that case, sometimes there are people who try to hide them or destroy them. I don't think when you're asking a private company for internal
Hmm.
documents that
Maybe.
there's much luck of that
Yeah.
actually happening. But sometimes there's somebody who's
All,
also on
all it
that
takes is
side
one.
who wants to do it.
Yeah. All it takes is one to leak.
Yep.
You never know. I mean, look, we got Jeffrey Epstein's birthday cards, so all things are possible.
It's possible. We'll have to see. It would be interesting to see what actually went on into that instead of just speculating. And a lot of people are saying a lot of things, just like we talked about earlier with the media that wants to get the word out quick. There's also people who want to stir the pot with their perception, with their where they're coming from, and
Right.
starting a rumor nowadays a lot easier than it was a long time ago. Now it just takes a couple of keystrokes and you can send it out to 100,000 people, which
Yeah.
I think is our viewership, right? Is about 100,000.
I think so. Just a little above
But
that, I think.
yeah, right. But it's easier nowadays to start a podcast or to start a video channel and get out your opinions. And some people are more genuine than others. So there are a lot of people saying a lot of things right now, and I don't think we know what really is happening or what's behind it. I think we pretty much did cover the media and talking about them.
Yeah, I think so.
But that speaking of media, somebody who just came out with a new book, hitting the media circuit to promote their book, is Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or what you're thinking.
Man, I got a lot of thoughts on that. It's another politician with another book, and I'm unimpressed with it for a couple of reasons. I wish she was a president now instead of the wooden stump that is. On the other hand, I feel like the American people, at least I did, I feel like I'm not alone, wanted her to be a little more passionate, go a little further, I think. And she came across pretty careful. Uh, and so it's that sort of dynamic that when she comes out with a new book and it's a kind of a chatty little tell-all about how Gavin Newsom and Pete Buttigieg acted behind the scenes, that's not what I'm looking for in a politician these days. We need help. We need leadership. We need people to take passionate, strident positions and actions. This is the same old political nonsense that I think people are sick of from her. And, she wants you to pay $22.95 for it. John Bolton came out with a book 6, 8, 12 months after he was in office with, supposed blockbuster reveals. Buddy, you're a public servant. Tell us now. You know what I mean? This Tom Homan bullshit. What if 10 months from now, somebody has a book? Oh, by the way, Tom Homan's a fraud. He's a criminal. He's been on the take since before he got in office. Come read it all about it in my latest, are you kidding me? Anyway, so for her to come out with a book, for what? And she's not running for governor. She's not running for anything. She doesn't want to hear your questions about it. I saw her on Maddo and she was like, nah, I'm not into it. Fine. What consequence are you then? Anyway, I'm sick of politicians and their books. I'm predisposed against that. When I heard she had a book, I was like, perfect. I'm very negative on it. I'm not giving her a chance. She had her shot. It wasn't perfect. She was kind of anyway, it's complicated. I don't blame her for everything, but I'm over it. I'm over her. I didn't love the swing she took. And again, we need someone passionate. We need people thinking new thoughts and ideas. This country is ready to be led in an anti-fascist direction, in an anti-Trump direction. And I feel like we're all just vibrating, ready, with energy, ready to put it somewhere. And very few of us, I mean, Gavin Newsom is the high watermark at this point, and he's done some great shit, but it's mostly Twitter. um, let's get active. Let's get busy. Let's get productive. Let's do things. There are things people can do. These are the finest minds. These are our public servants. They're rich because of us. They're comfortable because of us, and they're failing us. This country's under threat. I've been told my whole life these are our ideals, and by golly, we mean it. We'll fight, kill, and die for them. And you can't even get some of these folks to send a disciplined tweet and put some thought into it. And how can I serve these people? And how can I save this mother loving country? And anyway, I'm not feeling it. So Kamala and her book, I'm not going to worry about it.
I hear you. Yeah. So I'd say two things. One, the Gavin Newsom thing. I think he's, as you have pointed out, he's making a stand, which hasn't been done. So therefore, it's very noteworthy, and it's certainly doing a thing that is positive. I don't think he'll wind up as the nominee for the party. I think he's peaking way too early. I think he's going to burn out long before the primaries. But I'm sure he'll be in it. I mean, I expect Gavin Newsom. I expect from Illinois, Pritzker, Governor Pritzker. I'm sure he will jump in. There's a half dozen people who will, because we don't really have a leader of the party. So there's going to be a lot of people saying, okay, well, I want to do that. I want to lead the party, and to do that, I'll be the nominee. Years ago, I was hoping that Elizabeth Warren would have wound up not just winning Iowa, but having won the nomination. So if she were to jump into the race, personally, I'd be very happy about that. That would be somebody I'd be very happy to support again. But it's so far in, even a week in political time, a week is a lifetime. Right. And we're so far away from that right now, so that we can't, I don't think everybody will be happy to make a prediction, but I don't think we'll have any sort of a clear picture until much closer to the time that that the primaries actually take place. So I just wanted to say that about Mr. Newsom, Governor Newsom, and the Democrats as far as the next presidential campaign. There's so I'll tell you what, I'll jump to some international news for a moment, if that's all right.
Sounds good.
We'll talk about some things happening around the world. We'll keep this pretty short, I gather. But there are issues with what Russia's doing. Speaking of presidents and speaking of international things, Russia and its actions sort of against NATO countries to test things out, putting planes or drones into Poland and Estonia.
Oh, that minor issue.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, and also apparently Moldova is going to have an election this weekend. It's going to be on Sunday. And the president of Moldova has said that Russia is interfering with elections there. So once again, another thing to be worried about. Right. There's not just the military access, the military issues of the drones getting into NATO airspaces, but also things like interfering with elections, which we know they do. We know they did it here. It's not a surprise they'd be doing it in Moldova. But the question is, what can be done about it? And that I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, but it's important that it's known that it's happening. I guess there's also the UK. Um, in the UK, there's been the issues of the Labour government, which I think a lot of people outside of the UK saw the Labour government win the election and thought, well, that's a big change from the previous government, the Conservatives who had been in government. And I think that what folks on the outside may not have been so cognizant of, or just saw sort of the picture from the outside. They didn't realize, and what I'm saying is that it was the Conservatives who lost, not the Labour that won. Even though it was a large increase in Labour MPs, I think that what really happened, what happened was the Conservative Party fell apart. They fell apart because the Reform Party, the even more right, the alt-right wing, that started as a different party, a Trumpite type party, with Farage at the head of it, was able to pick up on most of that support. But it depleted the Conservatives almost into a third party. I mean, they came very close to really being completely wiped out. They didn't. They are still the opposition, but they took heavy losses, and I think in that, with so many people shifting to reform, Labor won because of that, more than that they just outright won it. Um, the problem with that is now that they're in power, there's things happening to them that wouldn't have happened to someone who was who's just somebody who had won outright on their particular merits.
Right.
So a whole bunch of several of the cabinet have had to resign. The deputy prime minister had to resign. Another cabinet member, and then now the Conservatives are trying to target another member, the chief of staff, or Keir Starmer, who is the prime minister. His chief of staff is now being targeted by the Conservatives for actions that he took a couple of years back, and they're trying to bring it back up and try to make something out of it, even though it's an issue that was resolved years ago with a commission that fined the guy for what he did. And that pulled up, yeah, that's the thing we're going to talk about next is Epstein. Speaking of people who have difficulties for their administrations that are popping up from years ago, there's always the Epstein list to talk about, because that should not be forgotten. Please go ahead and
Bring it up.
do that. Yeah, it's just to remind folks, the Epstein list, the unredacted Epstein list, has not been released for 3,753 days at this point. So we'll see how long that number increases, and if we ever see the unredacted Epstein list. Exactly. There you go. Thank you. And so let's leave that up for a minute or two while we talk about whatever we talk about, because many issues that we've talked about, there are some with the administration that they'll bring up or talk about or want to bring because Trump is trying to distract from the Epstein list, and how many days has gone without having released the unredacted version. So we can leave this up for, I guess, a minute or two, and let's see if folks have something to say about that, or indeed if you have any comments about it. Is there anything about the Epstein list that you'd like to mention?
The first thing that comes to mind about the Epstein list is the way it's been backburnered a bit, and people haven't forgotten about it. But Charlie Kirk blew up and kept blowing up in the public consciousness, and it's hard to. It's a tactic of this administration to have so many fires that you can't keep track of them all. However, I still think the Epstein list still has legs. I think it's going to continue to be a problem. and long may it be a problem. Long may it run. So I think it's kind of halfway to the back burner, but I don't think it's going away.
I think you make a fair point. It is out there. It has not, and the unredacted version has not been released for 3,753 days as of today. And I think we'll wrap up in a few minutes, maybe another 5 or 10 minutes. But that in that time, we'll want to touch on one other issue, at least, which is New York and what's happening there with the mayor's race. Is that fair enough?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So there is a general election for the mayor of New York coming up in November, for the November general election, and it's been it's not only been very interesting for people with a political bent, but also because of the issues within the Democratic Party of the establishment Democrats, and I haven't thought of a different word. I haven't thought of a different word other than establishment, but I got to come up with something better than that. And I guess you'll say progressive, or what's the word that's used sometimes? Reform, I guess.
Yeah.
And so the big issue has been that Zoran Mamdani, who is a assembly member from Astoria, that's Queens, a portion of Queens. He was an assembly member in the state assembly, and he's a democratic socialist. And up to the primary,
which I got to tell you, which used to be a scary term until we saw what good old capitalist Republicans do. And so people are like, well, tell me a little bit more about this democratic socialism. I'm willing to try anything once.
Right. Well, and even more so, I think it's because he's not actually taking positions that are so bizarre and so out of the world of politics nowadays. What are his positions? His positions are to make the buses free.
Well, which is a bit innovative. It's a bit different. It's almost radical. It's different.
It was actually piloted. It was actually piloted here, I believe, by the De Blasio administration. They did it for a brief time just to see how it would affect not only ridership but also if it could be done. And basically, they found out that it could. So it's not even radical.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, we want to talk about redefining radical. He wants to own a few stores in the city, which would have been really easy for some starch shirt Republican and the followers who believe him to make political hay of, because it sounds a little out there. Oh, the government, it's socialism, and communism and fascism and Marxism and whatever, any ism they can think of. They don't worry about definitions anymore. Anyway, it's so easily slandered by the other side until now the U.S. federal government is owning portions of Intel and these other corporations. Now we're all socialist. Might as well be, I mean, how can you rail against it when we're doing it on a federal scale? So, I mean, again, what is capitalism doing for you? It's not even living up to its own hype. It's not about the best product. It's not about the lowest price on the market. It's about fixing the system 6 ways from Sunday. I think people, if they're not open to something different, they should be.
That's right. And then when it's not actually, as you point out, it's not even radical stuff, and it actually kind of makes sense, and it's not not the extreme that everybody is against it desperately. And I mean, even Democrats, even some Democrats, I know some folks who I've spoken with on social media, folks who have been dyed-in-the-wool Democrats, who are not in New York, who say, oh my God, this is a horrible thing and it will change everything and nobody will ever vote for a Democrat again and all that kind of stuff. And you say, well, You ever heard of a guy named Bernie Sanders? You know, he
Right?
started off as a Democratic Socialist mayor. Okay, so maybe maybe the tent is big enough
Yeah.
that having a second Democratic Socialist mayor is not such a irreparable thing. I mean, it's not going to do nearly any sort of. It's going to happen. It looks like it. So my point was, up to the primary, everybody was saying how horrible it was. Everybody was saying he doesn't have a chance. He's going to get wiped out in the primary. Uh, the establishment had brought in this guy who was a former governor, for God's sakes, from a legendary family, the Cuomo family, and even a guy who himself had been governor. And there was no way that the other guy could possibly manage to take on such an important figure. Hadn't lived in New York City for 30 years, but that's not the sort of thing where you worry about when you're in a primary. And up to about a half an hour after the polls closed, that was the conventional wisdom. Everybody was saying, nobody believed anything differently. And then when it got about an hour into the period after the primary closed, all of a sudden, some results started coming out. And all of a sudden it was, oh, looks like he's going to win. He's not not only going to be able to take him on, he's going to beat him, and he's going to really give him a spanking.
Yeah.
It's not going to be even terribly close. And then all of a sudden, that's when the hand wringing came up, and all the, oh, well, you know, Cuomo just didn't run a good enough campaign. And then Cuomo came out and said, yeah, you know, my advisors were not that really good. And so it wasn't a good campaign because of the advisor.
Yeah.
And then a couple of days later, he said, well, actually, it was me. Okay, so it was me. I didn't do it well.
Yeah, because you look like a schmuck if you can't own up to your own responsibility. It's your campaign, win, lose, or draw. Oh, I had some bad pizza. It's the dog's fault. What are you talking about? Nonsense.
Exactly.
You have to, I mean, what a pathetic display. He had a couple days to think about it, it sounds like, and realized how weak he sounded. My mom's fault. What are you talking about? And
Yeah.
to me, and it was such an opportunity. I'm sorry, I think I just jumped in on you. It's so rude of me. But while I'm doing it, he the fact that it was a great example and opportunity for Democrats to punk out, and they lived up to the stereotypical. You know, they had a great opportunity to embrace a winner, a winner in a local primary, and they all stood back like he was, you know, like he was radioactive. Nobody wanted to endorse him. Nobody wanted to admit that the titan in the party lost to David beat Goliath, and they couldn't. I don't know. It was just terrible, and it reminds me of David Hogg, who is another young up and coming aspiring politician. He was what was he elected to? Vice president of the Democratic Party, something like that, and then they shit him out.
One of the vice chairs, of the party.
Yeah. And and then they railroaded him out of there. I don't know what went down, but this party needs terribly young talent, and they seem incredibly allergic to it when it comes and climbs up their legs and sits in their lap, and they reject it. And we can't keep doing that. There's so many things. I don't know. It bugs me, and it just smacks of that. This you're too good for the winning candidate. Get with it. Get behind your people.
Excellent point. Yeah, that is an excellent point, and that's part of. You mentioned David Hogg and the party structure, and that's another thing that's going to be up for grabs in 2026 in that primary election, not the general, but in the primary. There's very hyper local seats, things called county committee, the governing body of the local party, so the county's version of the Democratic Party, and the Republicans have it as well. And those seats will also be up. So having a say in the party and how they run themselves is possible to affect by becoming part of the party structure. It's not a, it's, it's a volunteer position. You do one or two things. It's not terribly complex. It's not a full-time, not even a part-time, a occasional sort of thing. But you can have a say in your local party on a very influential level by involving yourself on the county committee. And so the step above that, one or two steps above that, is what you were talking about with being on the national party's committee that runs things. And David Hogg was in and now is out because he was talking about challenging some of the incumbents in elections, which even without being a vice chair, he's still doing. He has encouraged candidates to run in different parts of the country. And that election I mentioned earlier, the Arizona Congressional 7 district, was a race where in the primary, one of David Hogg's followers was in on that race, and in that case did not win. But that's not something that's, when you're doing that kind of an action, it's not going to be everything all the time. You're going to have to work at it, and you're going to have to gain stuff. You're going to have to gain seats, and you're going to have to gain votes. So it's not going to happen automatically. And that's, what you got to commit to. If you're willing to commit to it, then you can build up to it.
Yeah. It
and
takes
so, yeah.
That's why I'm not a politician.
You don't think you could do it?
No, I'm sure I can't. I'm not disciplined. I don't have discipline for the day to day. Look at me. Look at my exercise patterns. They speak for themselves.
Well, I think you should give it a go. I mean, I happen to run for the county committee here in my part of New York, and I will run again in 2026. But it's, as I say, it's because it's a extremely part-time, like one or two things in a year, during a 2-year cycle that you have to really do. But you can still do some good by trying to build community in your neighborhood by being that person, and maybe not pursuing not doing what you might think a government official does, but as a party official, doing some positive things in your community and getting people to meet and know and talk to each other, and maybe even follow through on some concerns that they have, at least getting them connected to the people who can do something about it. That's a possibility when you have that. When you have
useful,
that position.
it's powerful.
Yeah. And with that said, I think that we should thank you all, those who visited during, those of you who are still here, that we greatly appreciate that you take the time to join us, that you listen to what we have to say, and we'll be back. We are set to do this on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. So please feel free to join us and pass the word on to friends, families, and foes. Go ahead and tell somebody you don't like. That's fine too. And
welcome.
Yeah, it would be everyone would be greatly appreciated. And Tom, is there anything else you want to add in?
No, sir. No, sir. That's it from us. Thank you for. I would like to add that we also are involved with a comedy podcast based on political current events called PolitiPod. Want to plug that and invite people to check it out. It's this has been discussion. That's more of humor based. I think you'll like it if you try it. Anyway, thanks for tuning in today. I want to thank everybody who stopped by to check us out.
Yeah, I heard of that too. I believe it's soundcloud.com/politipod is the political humor podcast. And then there's this PolitiPod Live. Same branding, different subjects.
Right.
And whatever is your flavor. If you like hearing people talk, join us here. If you like a little bit of humor, sketches, one-liners, and the Election Central is on there as well, so you can know when elections are happening. Please join us, either or both.
Not to be missed.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you, folks, and we'll see you next Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern.
Good night.
Good night, folks.